this is a cool topic for me. I like this topic a lot, and there's a lot more that I'm excited to learn about it. And I think the more you deep dive into it, the more you find out you can really deep dive into it. So my hope, even with the late start, is to be able to just kind of breeze over some of the basics of 4 different client-side storage options. First, the purpose of client-side storage. There's a couple. I just cherry-picked a few of them. One of them is state persistence, which we're going to get into next. That's next month, right? Using local storage for state persistence. Offline use of a website. The cache API, the new cache API is really cool with that. Saving user preferences and or session info. That could be as simple as this person likes dark mode, so we know that we want to activate dark mode. And then storing assets for quick consecutive page loads, or going back to number 2, even offline page loads. So there's 4 different types that I'm going to go over today. And the first is cookies. That's kind of the basic, been around forever. Everyone has heard of cookies. You get the pop-ups telling you they're using them. And then we have the web storage API, which is split into 2 sections, both local storage and session storage, and we'll get into that. IndexedDB, which I did not know a whole lot about when I first asked Sean if I could present on this. And that, if you want to deep dive on something, deep dive on IndexedDB. That's pretty cool and fun to work with. And then the cache API, which is the newest of the 4, but I believe it's adopted now in all of the major browsers. It wasn't in Microsoft, but as of a couple weeks ago when I downloaded Edge Canary, it is there in Edge Canary, so it will be in the Edge release. So going ahead and starting with cookies, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but cookies are generally set and read on the server side. They often reference some kind of sensitive material. You can expand the use on that, but a common use is making sure a session is authenticated, usernames, password hashes, that kind of stuff. They cannot exceed 4,096 bytes. There's a max of 50 cookies per domain. And just an example of a cookie. I didn't know how big this was going to be. But this is from the Utah.js conference website. And if you haven't signed up, you can go sign up. Here's the link down here. But you can see that there's 2 cookies. Can you see my mouse? You can, right? Okay. So there's 2 cookies that are there. There's the IP_jar, which is really common, and then the __ CFDUID, which is a Cloudflare cookie used for not authentication, but showing that they've tested the machine. And you can Google these. I went to ask Sean about one earlier and then just typed it into Google and got all the information I needed. So let me put that up there. This is what Google churned back on me. If you're a visitor in a coffee shop or somewhere like right now where you're using a public internet, then Cloudflare can place this cookie and say, this machine is safe. We no longer need to test it, even if we're testing other machines that are connected to the same connection. So that's an example of a cookie. How would we set this up? There's 2 different ways. There's the server side, and then there is a client side with your JavaScript. So looking at the server side, just a really simple example in Node, using Express and then using cookie parser, which just simplifies it even more. We've got 2 routes that I've put in here. The first is just kind of hello worldy, right? A root route. So if we get a request to the /, then we're sending back hi. That has nothing to do with the cookie. But the second one, if you get a get request to set user, then we can respond with a cookie. And in this case, I just put the information from the Cloudflare cookie. And you can see that when you set it, you've got a key value pair. And that's common for at least 3 out of the 4. You could say 4 out of the 4. And now let's go ahead and go to Scrimba and just take a look at what this might look like on the front end. And before I get started on Scrimba, first of all, is anyone connected to it and can see it? Yes, okay. That's affirmative for the room, I will say. Some of the stuff that we're going to be doing in Scrimba, I'm actually going to have to open up the console and do it in the console because of how Scrimba separates some of the storage utilities. But on the front end, if we're looking to see the cookies that are belonging to the domain that we're on, it's really simple. We can pull up the cookie string by just putting in document cookie. So that first function there, I'm just going to activate show cookies, call the function. And we'll see if we get anything. And now it's not working. All right, so if we do it in here, there you can see it. There's the cookie string. Let me just print it out so it stays. Okay. So you can see a couple different things. You can see the key on one side of the equal sign, and then you can see the value on the other side. And then each cookie is separated by a semicolon and a space. You don't see any of the other information that's sent with the cookie. If there's an expiration string with it, you don't see that. All you see is the key value. And then if you're going into your developer tools, you can pull that up as well. And you can just go over to application and see the cookies there. I don't know why it's not working in here. That's kind of a bummer. Let me just try reloading it quick. And if not, we will move on. Okay. Well, so at a minimum tonight, actually, you can just copy and paste the stuff from Scrimba into your console, and it should work there. It was working for me earlier, but not right now. So we'll just keep going. A couple notes about creating a cookie. You can see constructed with the key value. We already talked about that. If an expiration date isn't given, it's automatically set as a session cookie. So when you close out the window, it's going to go away. You can use the encode URI component function, which I did not know about until I was working on a project several months ago and realized that I could use that to make something safe to send through the HTTP request. And it's handy. So if you haven't used it, check it out. You can set a domain. You can set the max age. So if you don't want to do an expiration date per se, you can go in and say, I only want this to last for a month, and you can put in the time that way. Secure, you can use the secure option if you're going through HTTPS. They have now shut it off, where if you're doing HTTP, you can't use it. Here's a function that will set a cookie. So all I've done is I've set it up to take the name for the cookie, or the key, and then the value, the path that I want to set, and the max age. And you can see here what I'm doing. I'm just concatenating all of this. I've got the path that I want. If you haven't seen this before, this is a way of saying if we don't pass in a path or a max age, then it's just going to be blank. So I'm going to call this one. Let's see if this one works. Nope. All right, we'll copy and paste it. And I'm going to create a cookie named Donut that has the value of cream filled and awesome, has the path of home, and then print it out. You can see the console log here. So I've used the cookie name plus cookie data in this first console log, and then the second console log is with the encode URI component, so that it's safe if you're using HTTP. And you can see the difference there. Update or delete a cookie is the exact same thing. You could use this exact function. You just need to make sure that the name is the same and the path is the same. The way that you delete it is you give it a negative expiration date. So for example, you could give it this expires Thursday, January 1st, 1970 in this UTC time string. And if you set it there, it'll disappear. To find and read your cookie, here's a function for that. So I've just written it so you can type in the name of the cookie that you're looking for. So let me copy and paste that in. And even though it's not working the way that I wanted to on Scrimba for some reason in this room, I like that you're able to copy and paste this code or fork it for later use, instead of just trying to copy it off of a screen. Okay, so I'm going to try and find the cookie named Donut, and there it is. My cookie name is Donut, the cookie value is cream filled and awesome. Alright, so that's a simple explanation of cookies. Is it working? If anyone is trying it on their Scrimba, is it working for you guys at all? It is? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and then it was working for you? Okay. Yeah, so I tested it with nobody else connected and it worked, but there must be something different about the environment for some reason. Okay, so I'm going to go back. We're going to move away from cookies. And we're going to go to local and session storage. This was kind of my introduction to client-side storage because I was trying to create just a really, really simple app that would satisfy a project that had some user information in it, but I didn't want to do a back end for it. So I was looking into client-side storage, and I'll show you that in a minute. But local and session storage belong to the web storage API. They can be used similarly to cookies. Common usages include customer preference or page statistics. A lot bigger size in this. You can have between 5 megabytes and 10, and it's split between each storage type as I understand it. So if your browser is at 5 MB, then you can do 2.5 for local, 2.5 for session, and then 10 same way. Local storage persists until it's deleted manually or until the user goes in and deletes the store. Session storage persists until the window is closed. It does persist through crashes and reloads, which is nice. So here's an example. Team Treehouse, if anyone's ever used their website. This is a snapshot of the local storage they were using on my account. One thing I was interested to find was that they had my full name and my email and my username and all that stuff saved on there. It just seemed a little concerning to me, but we'll move on from that. Here is a session storage that was set up by Discord. So if you type in the Discord path and just go straight there, this is left empty. If you are redirected there from another link, it will populate this session storage key value pair, and they can read that and they can use that to find out where their referrals are coming from. So that's pretty cool. All right, so we can scrimba time for this one too. And this one is super short. It's super, super easy to use. If you want to check if anything is currently in the storage, all you need to do is look up localStorage length, and you can see if there's anything there. Okay, so there's one currently on my machine. Same thing for sessionStorage. It's exactly the same syntax. If you want to create local or session storage, there's two ways you can do it. You can do it with dot syntax. So you can say, I want the key to be first name and I want the value to be John. That's my name. Or you can do localStorage.setItem, and you can pass in last name, which is going to be my key, Meade, which is the value. So I'm just going to do that quick in here. And then if you want to return the object, there's a couple different ways you can do that as well. So you can do it by calling the getItem function, or you can do it with dot notation. I'm going to copy and paste those. What did I miss? There we go. So you can see the first console log is my full name using the dot notation, and then the second one I just asked for the first name value, so I got John. So to clear storage, another really easy one, all you got to do is say local storage clear or session storage clear, and you are good to go. It might show me still a positive length because Scrimba might have something on there. Nope, it showed me 0. Good. And if you're in your developer tools, you can go over to application, and you can just select local and session storage, and you can see what's in there. All right, any questions about the local or session storage? That's a super easy one. Let me show you how I used it. Let's go to Can you guys see that address? johnmeade-webdev.gitdev.io/bookfinder with a capital F. Really, really simple app that just calls on the Google Books API. There's no back end to this. I can type in what I want. It's going to give me my books, and then here's where the local storage is used. I can add books to a shelf, and then anytime I come back to this on my same machine and I click on my shelf, it's going to show me what's on my shelf. So, and if you look in the code for that, you can see all I'm using is a single key value pair, and the key is my shelf and the value is just a long string with all of the information I need to populate that view. And there's easier ways to do it than what I did just there. Lots of people use JSON, transfer it into JSON and use it that way. I kind of made my own little method just to play around with it. So that's my example of a really easy use of local or session storage. All right, so let's go on. And we already did the live example. Okay. So like I said, if you want to deep dive into something, IndexedDB is a deep dive. So have fun with it if you look into it. It does store key value pairs, but the value doesn't have to be a string like a cookie does, or like a web storage API value. It can be complex. It can be a JavaScript object. Basically anything you want. It works asynchronously through transactions and is based on events. Indices allow flexibility in returning results. the storage option is currently the go-to API for apps that utilize large amounts of client-side storage until they all figure out how to use cache API, and then they'll play together really nicely. Global limit of 50% of the free disk space on a machine with a group limit of 20% of the global limit. Persists until deleted, just like the local storage, or eviction is triggered due to limits being surpassed. So if you go over your 20%, it's going to start deleting your stuff. And then it's object-oriented transactional database. So it's really quite different than if you're using a relational database with SQL or even MongoDB. It took me a little bit to wrap my head around it. But here's a live example. So this was CNN this morning. I realized I didn't have a screenshot for it, so I just screenshotted it this morning. And you can see all of these, I lost my cursor, all of the databases there under IndexedDB. So they're making very heavy use of it. Yeah.
When you said the 20% limit,
Yeah.
what is that?
20% of the 50% total. So if there's a 50% global storage, then basically your domain group can use 20% of that.
So for that specific clump of data, so
Yeah.
for like 5 days, that's essentially at max.
Whatever, however many up until that amount. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I was looking above your head because I thought your voice was coming from up there. And then I found you. All right, so let's Scrimba this and see what happens. And this one I'm okay with doing in the console because you kind of have to do it piece by piece anyway. So I like to hike. You can't tell by my physique, but I do like to hike. So I am doing an IndexedDB object store that is based on hiking. So here's the data that I want to store. I've got it saved in a constant Utah trails, and you can see each trail has the trail name, the difficulty, the gain in feet, elevation, the length, and the location. So this is my object that's going to go within the database. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the name of my database is not changing as I'm doing stuff lower on in the code, so I've saved it as a const. And then I've just put an empty object for the database. That is going to store my database, okay? And to open up the database, let me just get this in the console. Okay. So to get into my database, I am going to request access to it, and you do that by calling on indexeddb.open and then passing in the name of your database and the version of the database. The versioning is really cool because you can change the version and you can change the schema. If that database doesn't exist, it creates it for you, okay? So in this case, nothing will exist yet. It's just going to go and create it for me. I've put in an error. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but I'll give you a place where you can read about it. I've put in an error handler and then an onSuccess handler. The onSuccess is basically being fired if the database already exists and the schema is in place. Then it's going to assign the database, which is the target result, into the DB variable that I declared earlier on. If the database doesn't exist and it's trying to create it, it's going to fire an onUpgradeNeeded event, which is right here. So I've put this in place, request.onUpgradeNeeded, and I'm going to take the event and I'm going to assign the database to my DB variable right there. And then I'm going to go in and say what I want to do. Okay? The object store that I want to use, I'm calling Utah, because the trails are all in Utah. And then auto increment is a way of setting a key for the data store, and I'm just going to say true, so that's going to build my keys for me numerically, 1 all the way up. You can choose whatever you want for your key. You can create them yourself. If there's something that's going to be unique within each object, you can pick that, and you can put unique true, and you can set key, colon, and then put the name. Like if I wanted to do it with the trail name, I could just put in trail because that's what I've named it. And then I'm going to create 2 indexes, and these are just simple ways for me to call on the information. So with that object store, I want to create an index called trail name, and that's going to sort by trail, and that's unique. The object store create index for trail difficulty is going to pull from difficulty in the object, and that's not unique because you can have multiple hard or moderate or easy. Then I'm going to listen for the oncomplete to omk. Let's change that to make sure your object store is created before sending data to it. So there's my listener right there. Object store, once the transaction is complete, I'm going to take that event that it returns back to me, or the event that it fires, and I'm going to let trail object store equal the DB that's been created. I'm going to call a transaction, and I want to open the Utah object store to read and to write, and then it declares the object store again. But then I'm going to go Utah trails for each, and I'm just going to loop through all the trails, and I'm going to add each one of the trails. Okay, so let me show you what this looks like. And it's going to yell at me about that, so let me delete that. Okay, no error message is a good thing. So I'm going to open up my DevTools just to show you quickly. And you can see in my IndexedDB, looks like it didn't work quite all the way. Yeah, I didn't get the name that I wanted. I'll have to check on that. But I got my object store. You can see the Utah data with each of the trails, and then the key that it created for me. And you can see it by trail name or trail difficulty. And those are the indices that I put in place. Okay, so to search the database for the trail with the name Fernwood Cabin, all I'm going to do is I'm going to open up another transaction with the database, and I want to open up the data store of Utah, and then I'm putting the object store on that as well. The transaction object store is Utah. The index I'm going to call upon is the trail name index, and then I'm going to call the get function with the trail that I'm passing into the function up here. And if it's a success, then I'm going to take the event that it fires, and I'm going to console log the event target result. Let me copy and paste that. Okay, and then I'm going to find a hike. Did I not do it? Oh, I didn't, did I? That's why I didn't get the name that I wanted. Correct. Thank you very much. There we go. There, we got it. Thank you. All right, so it returned the whole object for me. You can see the trail, the difficulty, all of that. There's different ways that you can process that. Obviously, you can print out just the trail or get it back as an array or whatever you want to do there. Say that I want to look for all trails. They've got a really nice function put in place that's just called getAll. So it's the exact same thing. You're opening up the transaction, you're telling it which data store you want to call it on, which is Utah. On the success, you're going to take that event and you're going to console log out the event. So here's my all hikes. And there we go. They're all listed right there. And then one more. I think this is the last one. Yep. One more is search for all the hikes with a rating of hard. And this is where I'm going to use the indices again, or the index of trail difficulty. And you can open up a cursor just like you can in a SQL database, SQL. And you can set different parameters about where you want the cursor to go and how far you want it to go. In this case, I'm just having it go through everything. So open cursor, if it's able to open, then my cursor is equal to the target result. And as long as there's a cursor, as long as there can be a cursor, then I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at the key, which is the trail difficulty. I'm going to see if that equals the difficulty that I passed in as an argument when I called all hikes. And if it does, I'm going to push it to this trails list array that I've created up here. Just the name of it, so cursor value trail. And then I'm telling the cursor to continue. And so that will loop through as long as it's able to continue. And then this bottom part is just printing out different messages based on if it's found what you're looking for or not. So let me copy and paste that quick. No. Here. That's not doing me any good anyway. And I named it sloppily. It's named all hikes difficulty. Alright, so I'm going to do a search. All hikes that are labeled as hard. And there we go. Trails that have a difficulty of hard are Waterfall Canyon, Lake Blanche, Fernwood Cabin. If I do it with easy trails, I get my, there was no trails with a difficult of easy response. So very quick overview of what the IndexedDB is capable of and how you access different things. There are so many different ways to use it that to really go into depth with it would be like saying, let's learn SQL in half an hour together. You can't really master it in that amount of time. So I would encourage you to look up on MDN. They have a great use case for IndexedDB, and they walk you through it. And there's some other ones that I've put on, that I've linked onto the page for this group as well. I'll pull those up at the end. Do we have any time left? Just a little. Okay. All right. And my misspelling continues. The AKE API is now the cache API. All right, so this API is super cool. It is super easy, and you can do so much with it. It's way easier to use than the IndexedDB, I think. And a lot of the same functionality. So it's the newest API. It's supported on all browsers except for Explorer and the old Edge. As I said earlier, Edge Canary has it. Limits vary by browser. I didn't see the exact limits. I think it's similar to IndexedDB. Same again, persists until deleted or until the eviction is triggered due to limits being surpassed. And then it's really set up to store HTTP requests and responses. So a very common use of this here on alligator.io, as you can see that he has saved all of the images that he uses regularly within the cache API, so they're on the machine already when the user goes to the website. He's also saved the basic HTML and the CSS and JavaScript for the main pages. So if you go onto the website and you're not connected online, everything is going to work exactly the way that you would expect it to work. So very cool. And then we can look at Scrimba on this as well. Okay, so another simple API to work with, just like the web storage. If I want to view the keys, all I'm doing is I'm calling on the caches object, and I'm asking for the keys. And then it's basically returning a promise for that. And then I'm going to take the keys once I get them, and I'm going to console log them. So let me just copy and paste that. Okay, so you can see that there's 0 on this website right now because the length is 0. If I want to add something, the add function basically does a fetch in the background and then takes what you've gotten and adds it to the API. So if I'm wanting to open up the cache document, and then I can name it whatever I'm going to name it. Then once it's open, I'm going to take that cache and I'm going to add whatever information is at the path that I put in. So you could have it as your home path, your index.html, or the path for images or whatever you want. And then I'm going to console log done. I'm going to show you this on another website, which I'm going to end up using this on, but I haven't implemented it yet. So this is going to be a very graphics-oriented website. And so all of the art, all of the books, the book front covers are going to be added into the cache API so that when you're coming back to the page, you can see it. But if I go on here, I'm giving my function, and then I'm going to call it add cache item. I just want the name to be, I don't know, we'll just call it main because I'm not very creative at the moment. And then my path, okay, and there it's added. If I go into my application, and I can see my cache storage. I've got a cache storage object named main, and then I can see it's HTML, and there it is. That's the HTML for the page. And then I'm not going to disconnect from the internet right now because I don't know if I'll be able to get back on. But were I to disconnect right now and then close the browser and then come back to it, you'd see it working the way it was supposed to work. That's true. That is true. Where is it? Offline. It's so simple. Okay. So, okay. So there's my no internet. It should work. But it's not. Oh man. Yep. Oh, come on now. Now let me just check. Okay, it's there. Let's see if it works this time. Where'd it go? There it is. Yay! Awesome! Thanks for your help, guys. Only 2 things left on there. I know that we're, 2 things left in 2 minutes. So here's a function for finding a cache. If you want to look by name, you just open up the cache's object, and then once it's open, you call the match function, and you pass in the path of the cache that you're looking for. And if it's there, you'll be able to see it. Same thing for deleting it. Super simple. You open up the cache object. Once it's open, you can call the delete function, pass in the path, and you're good to go. So that one is really, I know I've said it already, but that one is really exciting for me because you can store so much different kinds of stuff on it. But the API is so simple compared to something like IndexedDB that you need to dive deep to be able to get good functionality out of it. So super high level on all of this, but are there any questions about any of the 4 client-side storage APIs that I went over briefly? Yeah. Where would I put it? Well, it's kind of changing because you would traditionally you do it with cookies, right? But now with JWT, you're using that. Some people are using that in conjunction with the local storage, although I don't think that that's super secure. I think there's security issues. It is? It is. Okay. And I've not done that yet. Awesome. So there's your answer. You would use it with a JWT on local storage. And there is kind of a way of just kind of moving away from cookies with all of this stuff. JSON Web Token. And I think, is that being covered next week or next month as well? No, it's not. That would be a really good one, is going over how to set up use of JWTs. Any other questions?
I'm just wondering, what part on 230 to 234, I don't get where the HTML came in.
How I got it?
Yeah.
So I changed the path of it over here. So there's the function itself, right? And then when I'm calling the function, I'm putting in the cache name, which is whatever I want it to be, and then the path. And it has to be, it's specific to this domain, right? So if I put in the path JN Cheney, but I'm not on this website, it's not going to get anything. But it knows if you put JN Cheney on this path, it's going to give you the index.html, just like if you're going to it from a Google search. So if I wanted to do the JavaScript, I could just put in the path to my main JavaScript. So if that's main.js, yeah. Or eventually the images, wherever I have the book images stored or the art images stored, I can just put in that end path, and then it's there on the machine. So yeah. Any others? Awesome. Well, it's a topic I'm excited about, so hopefully you guys are excited about some of it too, and we'll go in and do some research on your own. But thanks for letting me present today.